Hi there, I'm the Reverend Danny Crosby, a Unitarian minister serving congregations in Altrincham and in Urmston in the northwest of England. And I offer this devotion as a balm for the heart, for the mind, for the spirit, and for the soul. And it's titled Radical Amazement, Walk Your Path in Service and Joy. I'm often amused by the people's responses to what is my vocation. I'm even more amused by what they call me. Careful. There was a couple whose wedding I conducted a while ago that called me father. Others assume that I'm a vicar. Alex, the flower man in Altrincham, often refers to me as father, but I think he's kind of pulling my leg a little bit. And a friend of mine's sister recently introduced me to her boyfriend as a priest, which I am not. I made that very clear. I am none of these. I have heard of a friend of a friend, an American friend, referred to me as Pastor Dan, apparently, which kind of made me chuckle. Excuse the accent. I'm sure I'm called many other things too, which I'm not going to repeat, so you better not either. Now, while my title is Reverend, I am, of course, a minister of religion, which I believe is an entirely appropriate title for what I actually do, what I actually am. For to minister literally means to serve, and that's what I believe I do. I serve people, I serve life, and I serve God. I am a minister, and to minister is to serve. Literally means that, to serve. I often wonder when I listen to our political leaders, if you like, those that are standing currently in the general election, if they are truly aware of that, what they are or what they may become, that they are here purely to serve we the people and not the other way around. The Prime Minister ought to be seen, or they ought to see themselves actually as the prime servant, the number one servant in this whole land, that they are there to serve all of us. Sadly, power tends to go to folks' heads, and I don't think they see it that way. If I was to appear on Question Time, or given the opportunity to question the current candidates, the leaders of each political party at this general election, I think that's what I would put to them. I think I'd ask them, as Prime Minister, how do you plan to serve we the people, to be a humble servant? Can you explain to me what it means to be the number one servant in this land? The Prime Minister should be the most humble person in the land. They should humbly serve. But enough of that. I am, after all, not that kind of minister anyway. I'm a minister of religion. And we're easily open to criticism, no doubt, looking at our past. To minister is to serve. Now, some say I am a bit of an unorthodox minister. I remember a congregant once saying to me that I was like no minister that she'd ever met before. And of course, those infamous words of Bill Darlison in response when I told him this was, Danny, you are unlike any minister that anyone has ever met before. So maybe I am an unorthodox minister, but I've always been an orthodox generally anyway. I'd be an unorthodox bin man, I think, if I was a bin man. But the truth is, I simply do my best to fulfil my role, to simply serve through love, to show others the way of love and service, and hope in the midst of, and offer hope in the midst of suffering. I cannot take away anybody's suffering, but I can walk with them. And in doing so, meaning emerges and despair is dispelled for both those I'm with and those that are with me. I am relieved too. To quote good old Micah, chapter 8, verse 6. He has told you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. That's to me what it means to minister. Will you come and walk with me? The invitation is yours. We've lived through some challenging years. Most of us have had some difficult personal challenges too in our lives, no doubt, and the lives of those that we love. This has always been the case. Life always challenges us. There's always pain and suffering. But it does not mean we can't find joy. It was something that was so beautifully explored just a week or so ago in the Common Search for Meaning group in Urmston that was so beautifully led by John Poskett, as we experienced joy, as we remembered and shared the things that gave us pleasure. It was a pleasurable and joyful experience just remembering. It's vital to remember and to share our joy, just as much as it is vital to share our suffering. I was out with some friends on Monday. We were supposed to be walking Molly and Ronnie, her friend. I don't know what you'd call it really. I think they're in love, that's all I can say. They don't need us to walk with them, they just enjoy being with each other for hours and hours and hours. I think they just roll around with each other all day long. Now, one of my friends was suffering that day. His grandmother had just died. And two other friends that were walking with us were carrying sufferings within their families too. And we shared together, and we walked together, and we talked together. And as we did, we watched the dogs. Joy came to the surface. Joy visited and said hello. Watching those dogs wrestle was utter bliss. Not to make light of the real suffering that some of us were experiencing, we walked and we talked and we shared together. And there was real faith and healing in this. And in some ways, it's that gives birth. As we shared together, as we walked together, as we talked together, as joy surfaced, as it always does. It is easy to feel powerless against the tide of suffering. How do we keep our heads up and our eyes and our hearts open to one another and to life when life is so difficult? How do we find hope in the midst of suffering? How do we transcend despair? Well, I believe it begins by being together. I believe it begins in ministering together. I believe it begins in and through service. Rabindranath Tagore said, "I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy." And it begins by bearing witness to love and service and coming together and holding and inspiring one another, walking together in our shared suffering at times and joy, together in love. You see it in the little things as much as you see it in the big things. And it doesn't take away the suffering present in life, but it helps us see that our suffering is not unique, it is shared, that we all share a similar experience of both suffering and joy. To quote the sadly lost Jo Cox, murdered, she said on her maiden speech, if you remember, "There is more that unites us than divides us," a legacy really now of her loss. To expand on that by Harry Stack Sullivan, "We are all much more simply human than otherwise. Be we happy and successful, contented and detached, miserable and mentally discorded, or whatever. We are all more human than otherwise. We all live with the same struggles. We are all born from this same earth. We all live under the same sun. We all, I believe, have the same spirit running through us all. We all suffer and we all know joy. As we serve one another, as we minister to each other, meaning emerges and we discover our own true hearts, It does not end the suffering, but it does create hope and meaning from the suffering. And in so doing, we build a legacy of the heart for those who will follow us. As we serve one another, we develop our own hearts and souls. In serving one another, we are working on ourselves and our own souls. Every act, every word, every gesture of genuine compassion naturally nourishes our hearts and our minds and our souls. For service is soul work. It is the heart in action, and it brings us fully to life. In so doing, we transcend, or we are transformed by the very real suffering. Suffering is just part of life. But we can grow from this despair, and hope, or new hope, or despair can be born. Through faith in life itself, by giving ourselves fully to life, we know joy. Joy is an attribute of a full, rich and deeply meaningful life. It is radically different to just fun or mere pleasure and happiness, which are emotional qualities. Joy is a spiritual quality that is present within us despite life's circumstances. Joy is about connection, it's about intimacy, it's about intimate connection. When I know joy, I'm at one with life, and I am at one with myself, and I am at one with my God. Through love and service, we can begin to once again awaken to the amazement that is this life. And we can know joy in this life, even in the suffering. You see, joy can be known even during life's troubles and difficulties. The people Jesus spoke to 2,000 years ago did not live easy and comfortable lives. Those people knew about conflict. They knew about oppression. They knew about tragedy. They knew almost constant grief. He told them that all that was wonderful, life-giving, life-affirming, all that was meaningful was theirs. He said to them, "Enter into my kingdom with joy. And this is my commandment, that you love one another." Love and service, creating joy. It's that simple. See, the kingdom that he spoke of can be with us right here, right now. We can know and experience that commonwealth of love right here, right now. And how? Well, by fulfilling the commandment to love one another. But love is not a sentiment, a mushy sentiment. It's an act. It's a way of being with each other. What we were doing on Monday. The commonwealth of love comes into being by giving ourselves fully to each other and to life. Through giving ourselves fully to life and each other, we truly realise the joy of living. In so doing, we'll be awakened to the true amazement of what it means to actually be alive. I witnessed this beautifully the other day as I walked with my grieving friend. He told me he'd spent 2 hours the previous evening just listening to his auntie. His auntie had spent the final few hours with her mother, his grandma, and his auntie simply shared about the experience, and all he did was listen. He said very little. All he did was bear witness. He helped bear her pain and her suffering. It seemed she hadn't really spoken of what had happened with anybody else up to this point. And this brought him close to his aunt and, of course, to his beloved grandmother in those final hours. But it also allowed his auntie to share her suffering. She'd been too caught up since the death with the practicalities to speak to anyone of her own grief, and he sat and he listened and he bore witness. I remember thinking to myself, this is exactly what Jesus was speaking of on the Sermon of the Mount. This is the kingdom of love, right here, right now, in that moment as he listened and as she shared. The kingdom's not some mysterious state in another dimension, but the idea of walking side by side in this same spirit, in the kingdom of love. This commonwealth of love that comes alive through our humble human being when we live in and by love. Tagore said, "I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy." And I believe that this is the purpose of the religious life, to awaken joy through service to and for one another. Joy is about connection. It's about intimate connection. When we give of ourselves to others and to life, we know the joy that is truly living. That said, when we live only for ourselves and live disconnected from life, we quickly become joyless once again. We lose faith in God-given life. Our experience of life becomes dulled and meaningless. It's nowhere to live. Some people tell me that everything happens for a reason. And when they say this, I suppose they're suggesting that everything that happens in life is part of some divine plan. I don't see things that way. I don't think I ever have, really. And the reason really is because it opens the great theodicy debate. How can an all-powerful and all-loving God allow suffering? Which is a question, of course, I must address constantly as a minister. But the truth is, my conclusions, if you like, about this kind of suffering and predestination, if you like, is I don't believe everything in life is preordained or predetermined. I believe that the future is unwritten. The book of life is never sealed. I do believe in the lure of divine love. That all life is given free will, if you like. And it's our task to bring love alive in our lives and to encourage others to do the same through our example. And in this sense, we are not powerless against the tide of despair. It is our responsibility to become beacons of hope to others in their suffering, to become the light of the world, to go back to the Sermon on the Mount. Hope rises from the ashes of suffering and meaning emerges through our living and our breathing. This is why everything matters, every thought, every breath, every feeling, every action, every word. This is also one way in which joy can be found in life itself, through love and through service for others, despite the very real turbulence that we live through. I believe in life and I am constantly in awe and amazement at life itself, despite the very real suffering. I live with my eyes, with all my senses, including my sixth sense, fully awake, alive. It's the only way I know how to live, so I have to live this way. Now someone will ask me, how on earth can you believe this? And my simple answer to this is, well, this is what my 52 years of living, breathing and waking up has taught me. This is the lesson that life has taught. I believe in life. It constantly amazes me. It has done again this week as I have walked side by side with others. Life, amazes me constantly. Despite all the darkness and the destruction that's present in life that can overwhelm us at times, life and love always seems to find a way through. Like those little shoots that find its way back to life every springtime, finding its way through all the obstacles, insisting on reaching out beyond itself and finding life through the cracked earth. That amazes me. I find that utterly amazing. Abraham Joshua Heschel said that our goal should be to live life in radical amazement. Get up in the morning and look at the world in a way that takes nothing for granted. Everything is phenomenal. Everything is incredible. Never treat life casually. To be spiritual is to be amazed. Through living in love and service, I am awakened to the amazement of life. My senses are fully awake. Heschel called that radical amazement. You may ask, what on earth did he mean? Well, radical amazement captures those moments, those deeply human moments, when we find ourselves intensely connected to the mystery and the majesty of existence. And it's found not so much in the big moments, when we mark our life's achievements, but more in what Heschel himself describes as the common and the simple. It comes in the little things, as I often say, those small things that reveal the infinite significance of existence. In many ways, radical amazement is about paying attention and looking deeply at the routine moments of our lives and experiencing just how incredible they actually are. There are some parallels with mindfulness, but I think it's more than just being mindful. There is a sense of eye-popping awe and wonder in looking through radically amazed eyes, actually. It's more than just it's being affected by it. It's about seeing the miracle in existence. How many of us truly recognise and acknowledge just how amazing it actually is that we even exist at all. You and I. Radical amazement is about looking into life with truly open eyes. It is an ethical act. It is an intentional decision. It is the ultimate spiritual practice, and as such, it's one that involves great risk. This is because it opens us up to all that is, as all that is truly is. And this requires courage, because to see the beauty also requires us to see the horror too. Then that might seem too much for some, too blooming awful. But it's the awe that accompanies vulnerability that is required to be awakened to radical amazement. To see the world with awakened eyes, fresh eyes, open eyes, is to look into life in radical amazement. It is life as it truly is in its awe-filled beauty. It is to truly let life in and to fill us to the brim, to bursting with life. It's wonderful. Radical amazement is how to live and breathe our human spirituality. At its essence, spirituality is about being amazed. It's about cultivating greater openness and a deeper awareness of the beauty and blessing and mystery of life. Yes, of course, suffering is part of life. You can't avoid it. Everybody suffers. Life itself, though, is not suffering. I don't believe that. Love and joy are also an aspect of life too. How do we experience love and joy? Well, it's quite simple, really. It comes through living with all our senses wide open. It begins by simply opening our eyes and opening our arms. It begins in love and service. It begins by walking humbly with one another and humbly giving thanks that we even exist at all. This is what it means to live in and through hope, and it is this that will lift us up from despair, despite the very real suffering in life. It begins by simply looking into the eyes of our neighbour and recognising the amazing thing that is their existence, and continues as we walk in and out of the places of our world, as we look at the world in which we live, and by simply giving thanks for life. For it truly is amazing, that life exists at all, that you and I exist at all. What are the odds, eh? May love guide us in the weeks ahead. May it lead us to hope and away from despair, in spite of the very real suffering in life. Amen. So here's some final words of blessing. We need to bless more. We can all bless. And we bless when we give ourselves wholeheartedly to life. So may the blessings of life be upon you. May this time shared offer hope for the future. May the love shared bring strength and joy to your heart, and may peace be upon you and all that you love. And may that light shine from your very being, and may it do so in all that you feel, in all that you think, in all that you say, in all that you do. In peace and love. Amen.